Okay.
You can still pick a background. Great Tuesday. Welcome to the King Connection podcast show. And it's going to be the launch of a new show that I'm doing with my co-host here. And Kenja Yasin, I want to welcome her to the show. We're going to build together. How you doing today, in Kenja?
I'm great as always, Mr. King. Turn my ring
Great.
off, make sure we don't get any distractions.
All right, so this is our premiere show. So this is really to kind of get our vibe together as we begin to build. So with that being said, what's your spiritual energy number today, in Kenja?
My spiritual energy number is always a 10. 10 or beyond. I am filled with gratitude, excited to be here, um, excited about just life, about everything, my understanding of life. I'm filled with gratitude.
Absolutely. And what's your gratitude moment? What are you grateful for? Share your list.
I love going over this list. I am grateful for my health. I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for the miracle of being able to watch the sun come up this morning. I stole that from somebody too. I was watching something the other day, so just in case that I use it again. But yeah, I don't. I'm sure they don't mind me stealing that. But I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for business. I'm grateful for just life itself. That my organs are all working fine, even when I'm not treating them as I should. They still show up for me every single day. My limbs, just life, just everything. I'm grateful. I'm just grateful for everything.
So am I. My gratitude, spiritual energy number is a 10. I live in gratitude. And I'm grateful for my life, my health, my ability to sit here, walk, talk, stand, breathe, have sound mind. I'm grateful for another 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life. I'm grateful for my problems, because through those problems, I see opportunities for growth. I'm grateful for my ability to have friends and be surrounded by people who uplift me. I'm grateful for having a roof over my head and food to eat. And I'm grateful for the infinite possibilities that today is going to provide. So let's get into it. Today is our, again, inaugural launch of our new show we're going to do called Learning How to Be More Fully Human, which is a combination of both our brands, Your Learning How, and then my being fully human. And as we go on this journey to be fully human, we're going to discuss in today's show what it looks like from a parenting perspective, as well as understanding how does being fully human at an early age and infusing those thoughts into your children impacts early childhood encounters. So, with that being said, why don't you start off the show by telling me something good?
Absolutely. So I'm really excited about this show. I love the name. I know we came up with it just on the whim, like in one of our other meetings, just talking. Um, but yes, so something good is I've been reading this book called Ready or Not, the last 12 years of early childhood development or early child encounters. And that's where I came up with the name Brain Architect today, because it referenced so many pieces of how childcare has evolved over the years. But I'm really grateful to be able to that those two that we found synergy in how we could build together in our spaces. And one of the things that, as you always talk about being fully human, that I'm always reminded of how many things we're unlearning, and what the world would be like if we were able to infuse these things as brain architects in our little people early on. And so it just had me going into a deep dive of what our interactions look like with our children every day, not just in childcare. I have Parenting Doesn't Come with a Book, but also how we show up as how our fears show up, how our doubts show up, and how all of those things are really just learned behaviors. Like I have the luxury every day of watching children believe that they can do anything. Like when you watch children and dress up and they put on an astronaut costume, they are literally in their mind sending that rocket to the moon. And so that's what's good for me, that the work that I do, I get to learn how to be fully human by observing little people be fully human.
That's what's up. I love that. You know, to help people understand what we mean by fully human, we came up with pretty much four key things that helps a person understand how to be fully human or what we define as being fully human. And those four things are: energy is everything and everything is energy. That's rule number one. That's commandment number one. You can call it that. Number two, energy is always in a constant state of motion. So it's either a decrease or it's an increase. Number three, we focus on the increase. And then number four, our identity is fully human. So regardless of what our race is, our ethnicity, our career, our religion, as well as our trauma, any of those things that we use divide us. Our country, what defines us, what unites us is that we identify as fully human. We're not saying that we're not the other things. That's descriptions of who we are. Just as our body has arms and legs, or we play roles as mother, daughter, sister, brother, uncle, father. Those are just roles. Fully human is our identity, and that's the lens we look at, and that's the lens we operate our behaviors through. So that's fully human. And to build on that, we developed there's 6 pillars to being fully human. That's what we're going to discuss today as it relates to early childhood. I like to put that as the context. And these 6 pillars are: number one, again, identity. Identity is everything. How you see yourself is your lens you look at through the world. Number two, we want to look at your your growth mindset. Sorry. Having a growth mindset means that you're open and you don't have all the answers today. So we're learning how to be fully human. It's a show talks about. And then she talked about children. See, children already know because their souls come here knowing, and then they get programmed by the construct, and they have to spend the rest of their lives trying to remember who they were. Number three, having a higher purpose and serving is the third pillar, meaning that you have a higher purpose for your life than just your own personal ambitions and goals and desires. Number four is having a grateful spirit, that she and I opened the show with, talking about what we're grateful for, because gratitude is a state that we're in. And if you're not living in a state of gratitude, then you're going to more likely be living in a state of lack. And that's a horrible way to live life, because it's going to give you anxiety, it's going to give you depression, it's going to make you always feel that you need something that you don't have, which is looking for some external. Number five is your governing principles, which you use to govern your behaviors in your life. And you have to have those so you can always have your true north to go back to when things get challenging. Again, being human is not being perfect. It's about the fact that you understand that humans make mistakes, but you know that you can atone for those mistakes, grow from those mistakes, and move forward. And then the sixth pillar is self-awareness, where you are aware of your impact of your life and your actions on your community and your environment and the ecosystem in which we live. You're aware of what that looks like. When people say that person didn't read the room because they wasn't aware of who they are and what their energy brings to that room. So those are the 6 pillars. And I want to discuss with you, Nkenge, what are your thoughts about any of those pillars as it relates to early childhood encounters, or just what you do in your work daily with parents or children in general?
Sure, you were going just a little too fast for me, and I wanted to speak to each one of them. If you could just read, without giving, I know the definition of them. If you just give me the name of them again.
One is identity. Two is growth mindset. Three is higher purpose and serving. Four is having a grateful spirit. Five is your governing principles. And six is self-awareness.
Thanks. So, one of the things that one of the spaces that I wanted to talk about was gratitude, right? So there are I read not too long ago or a while back something about like depression, right? Other than clinical, like I'm no doctor or anything, but other than clinical depression, that depression was just a lack of gratitude, right? Like not clinical where people need to be, medicated. They have something neural, you know what word I'm trying
Neurologically wrong with them.
neurologically wrong with them. But I realized that from my own life, right? Like I think that is a space that you have to constantly remind yourself to be in, right? When I think of every chapter of my life, right, or the things that would worry me or doubt, each each day for me gets better and better, right? Every single day gets better and better. But sometimes I've set the bar so high for myself that I was not able to be still and be in the moment. So gratitude for me right now is being present and really living in this moment right now, right? Like this moment that you and I are having
Right.
is it, right? I don't know what's going to happen when I leave out of here. You don't know what's going to happen when you leave out of here. And I think children live like that, right? All the time. They are in constant gratitude. If you give them something, they're excited about it. If they come up with an idea, if they learn a new skill, like they are so grateful for so many small things, right? Like if their Maslow has the hierarchy, the Maslow hierarchy, and it talks about when all of the basic needs are met, food, shelter, all of those things, and we have those things, right? Everything else is a plus from there. And
Right.
so I definitely that gratitude as one of the principles resonate with me. I probably would put it at the top of the list. It would be first on my list, but gratitude would definitely be the one of the key principles that stuck out to me.
I wanted to share my screen and bring up the 6 principles this way, so it'd be easier for us to reference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because this note taking was about to go left for me, trying trying to make sure I captured everything. But absolutely, absolutely. And you purpose and serving, right? I've done a lot of service unintentional, like right? Like it's been really innate for me to be that way. My father was that way. Like he was a giver in a lot of ways. He shared himself. Community was really important to him. And so I took on that trait. However, I realized that I like how you have those two together because purpose and serving go hand in hand. And I think that when you have purpose, it makes you more intentional about the way that you serve. So, although I've always loved working with children, I've always been passionate about working with children, understanding brain development, advocating for rights for them is a part of my servitude, but it's intentional because my purpose is making sure we change the world through early encounters, that children have access to things to make them to have a sustainable, beautiful life.
Now that's a great way that you laid it out, and I love how you went to gratitude first, because again, you know, I explain to people that when you enter the state of gratitude, the goal at that point is to stay there, and the way you stay there is what we did with our list, right? That's one of the things that we go through to get into that state. When you go through the list, like when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I want to do is list my gratitude, what I'm grateful for, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, all things we said earlier. And to me, once you do that, I don't see how you can choose to be less than a 10, right? That's what sets that 10. That's what sets that gratitude. Now, if I woke up and just listened to the news the first thing in the morning, let my alarm clock wake me up and I'm hearing the news tell me about what the administration had just done and the bombs and the wars we're having, or who got shot in the city, or whatever it is the news wants to paint, which is always negative, which is always hopeless, which is always despair, then you're not going to wake up in gratitude. You're going to wake up in lack. You're going to wake up in anger. You're going to wake up in frustration. You're going to wake up feeling of hopelessness and anxiety. And then you're going to go out and drive, and then you'll get cut off in traffic, and that's going to raise your anxiety. and all those things are just, and then the day in life is going to happen to you. You're going to have deals go wrong, people meetings get canceled, scheduled late, people show up late, co-workers or direct reports don't have their documents or don't have their tasks done. All these things that happen in normal life are going to be received differently when you're not living in a state of gratitude, and which is going to cause your energy to go down. You're going to have decreases in your life. And so now, what you said earlier when it relates to you talk about your father and you talk about children, my question is, because I know that when you're dealing with parents, and you're dealing with parents particularly early in the morning, and you're dealing with parents who are waking up to life and all those things that they're dealing with, like I just laid out, and then they have to drop their kids off, and then they have to get ready to go to school. And so what kind of energy normally will you feel that parents bring their children, drop their children off at your center with?
That's a great question. I want to just respond first to what you were just talking about waking up with the energy. Like, I literally, if my day is thrown off and it means I'm gonna miss my gratitude in the morning, everything gets pushed back now. Including, I'll give you, like, I realized after one day of not setting that intention in the morning, my whole day was just nonstop. I didn't determine what my day was going to be like that morning as I normally do, and everything that day, and I could not figure out what was off. And then, as after I reflected, I realized that what was off was I did not make time for me in the morning. Like, I have to get up, I have to pray, I have to have my moment of meditation, my moment of gratitude. I want to incorporate yoga and exercise in that morning too. I used to go swimming, but though that is, so it's not optional. Just like I don't leave
Mm.
out the house anymore without brushing my teeth or washing my face, showering. Like, it is in that list of priority. So much so that we woke up last week late, and I don't play about my children getting to school on time, but we woke up late, and I was like, we everybody's gonna be late this morning. It just is what it is. I need this. I have to take this time. So that's definitely a priority for me. Especially that'll, now I can go into your question, especially dealing with the parents that I deal with in the morning, right? Like, I have to be centered to be able to hear them in the morning deal with their stresses. But I intentionally chose to be somewhere where I was going to be able to support families like that. I knew when we came to this community, we did the demographics and the research on this community and other areas in Baltimore that we plan to license in at some point. We did the demographics to know that these were the places that people needed the most help, and that's where I wanted to be. We've had several opportunities to be other places that even pay us more money, with less stress, because less poverty breeds stress, right? Like,
Right.
trauma breeds stress, right? And so, but we knew that the change that we wanted to be able to make was in communities like this. And so, what does that look like in the morning? It looks all different kinds of ways, right? It could be um a parent that's pissed off because I'm turning them away because their child has discolored mucus, right? And
Mm.
discolored mucus means that I'm good. This is a great question too, because I'm thinking through this, right? Discolored mucus means that it's contagious normally, right? And until they see a doctor, we can't jeopardize the rest of the children for this child. However, that parent does not get paid unless they go to work, right? So that's a tough space. Like, so, I've had people say, "What the f you want me to do?" And I know what that means. That means if I don't get my child to your center today and go to work, that means there's a possibility that may have an effect on something else for me, right? And
Right.
so you have to be in a good space to be able to tolerate people talking to you that kind of way. You have to be able to set boundaries and still understand their frustration, right? And so that, and then you have parents that give me a hug every morning, right? So it's a balance, but being compassionate and understanding the only way you can do that is if you're not taking it personal, as we both enjoy uh the four agreements, is just to not take it personal. And so centering myself and having doing that self work is what allows me to be able to deal with anything in the morning.
You know, now I'm curious now because you brought that question. You brought up a scenario that, and I was kind of picturing that in my mind. So, what do the parent do? And I mean, what do you do in that situation when a parent has a child, as you say, with discolored mucus, and now they work at a job, typically, as you talk about in poverty or low income neighborhoods, as they call them, it's going to be a job that doesn't have a lot of tolerance for being late. Like it's not a career that most people have. They have jobs, and these jobs not going to tolerate that kind of behavior. So that she may actually lose her job if she can't get her child situated quickly enough with you or somewhere else. That might actually, as you say, it affects other areas, but that actually may impact her employment. How do you work through that situation when you have a parent when you know that might be the actual call? I mean, that might actually be the result of you not accepting her child.
Yeah, so that's a preventive service, right? Like that's something that we do. That was a great question. I'm glad that you asked that, because that we those are things we always have to think through for the families, right? You think of uh um generational oppression, right? Like everybody has been functioning within the construct, individualism, not building community, and just having to worry about themselves and their family, right? So that's what learning how creates that ecosystem for people, right? When they come in, we do what we call an intake, and it has SMART goals, things that the families are trying to accomplish, and we help them build that village. So every month we have a family engagement opportunity so that we can create space for individuals to work together. Like this will be the time where maybe they can share services like a village, like your whole tribal thought process, right? As I was we had a family engagement last night. I thought of you because I know you always talk about building tribes and everything. And I realized some of the things that we're already doing is very much like the tribal method of building community within in the spaces. So we allow opportunities for people to share at those meetings. We during our intake, we know what most families already need. So whether it's babysitting opportunities, whether it's things that they could share, and a lot of the parents, they're same age, they have the children that are around the same age, they can be a support to one another. And so that's what we try to create for them, like understanding that you can't raise children alone. Even if you want to, you can't. Like because those things are going to happen, you have to be able to have a big mama, you have to be able to have a trusted friend, even when your children are teenagers. Like I'm raising a teenager now, and I'm forever grateful that I have trusted friends that she feels more comfortable talking to, right? You have to have that village in parenting. Whether you think you can handle it on your own or not, it's not possible. You're helping shape and cultivate another human being. And so we help families cultivate and establish that village for them as a preventive measure. Now, when she comes to the door with the child, there's nothing we could do at that point. You know, we can't isolate them. We don't have a pediatric therapeutic childcare where we can put them in a bubble and quarantine them from all of the other children. So there's nothing that can happen in that moment, but there are discussions we can have ahead of time that says, and these are real conversations to say, how much leave do you have at your work? So you can't go to Miami for 7 days if you only have 7 days of leave. That's something we have to talk through prioritizing. You got to save those 7 days because you have a 2-year-old, and 2-year-olds are going to have discolored mucus from time to time. And so Miami might need to be 2 days instead of 7, right?
Hmm.
And so those are real conversations where when Big Mama doesn't exist, to be able to say that in the household, and most of these children, like we're coming through a generation of um I'll say in this space, I'm just only going to speak to this space where we have parents who didn't have parents, right? Whether their parents were substance abuse users, so they're learning how to be a parent in real time, right? They're learning how to be a parent now. And so those are conversations, uncomfortable conversations that you have to be okay with having with them. Like, you know, you have to put a hat on that boy. You know how like the grandmother would, boy, you make sure that boy got a hat on. Like, you have to be able to have those kind of conversations with them and say, when they tell you, hey, Miss Penny, I'm going to Miami, you're not going to see him next week. You can say, so did you account for the days that he's going to be sick too? It's time to start having those conversations. So when they do come to the door and frustrated after returning from Miami, and this is no judgment, it's just the reality that you have to prioritize things differently when you have a child.
It's interesting that you say that, and it's interesting your approach that you have shows a community and village type of approach to what you're doing to child development. And that's why, through you, I've learned the difference between babysitting, which I thought that it was, until I talked with you and you began to explain the whole family-centered approach and how you work with the kids and what you're educating the kids through. So you're not babysitting at all. It's not that in any context. It's like literally comparing grade school to college. It's not comparison at all. Yeah, people involved is the only thing that's in common with that. But now, with that said, in that context, I want to go back to my early childhood, and I thought about how blessed I was to be raised in the community I was raised in, St. Louis, which was a small suburb they call University City, which is a suburb of the city of St. Louis. And what's interesting enough about it, St. Louis then, and I believe still now, haven't been in St. Louis in years, but it was heavily segregated. It was black and white communities. My neighborhood was a black community, but we wasn't in poverty. We wasn't rich either. We all had single family homes with yards, front yards and backyards, and we grew up in neighborhoods where there were a lot of kids, a lot of parents, young parents had kids. So a lot of kids to hang out with, play with, do sports with. But what was the way we were raised, being Generation X, our parents taught us that we had to respect everybody who was my parents' age. Anybody that was an elder, we respected. We had to. So if we got caught playing in the street, which we often did, and we were doing something that our parents wouldn't approve of, like stand on top of somebody's car, or something just totally stupid as kids do to have fun. And the more dangerous, the more adventurous it is, the more fun it is, obviously, the more taboo it is. And if one of those neighbors saw us, she had the right to come out and whoop our butts, not only chastise us, but give us a spanking. I mean, I never got spanked by another parent. They always had that restraint. I mean, they had the right, though. My parents gave them the freedom to, if they wanted to. You saw us tripping, hell that. No one really did, but they would chastise us, stop us, and then call our parents, which was worse. Because they dealt with it, and that, with energy being everything, if they gave us a whooping on the street, it ain't gonna be as intense, and it probably would have ended it right there. But so my question from you, and I look at that's how I, growing up in that kind of community, I felt nurtured. I felt safe. We can be 7 years old by ourselves, running up and down the street and playing and going 2, 3, 4 blocks over without our parents having any other deal where we are, and get back home safe. Because we go in as a group, we're like 6, 7 deep, and we come back. No one's really walking by themselves. And if they did, it was still a safe neighborhood, and I'm thankful for that, because it really helped me see the value and teach me community at an early age, and really see where I see kids who don't have that ability, and how young parents now say, no, that's my child. They take that more of a ownership. You better not touch my child. Not only touch my child, you better not even look and say anything to my child, because I'm going to take that personally, and then I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to bring energy towards you on that. So my thoughts are, what do you think about that? And how do you see parents and of these millennials who are millennial parents, or even now Gen Zs who might just be stepping into parenting, what do you think about how they look at raising their children in the community aspect?
So, I want to go back a little bit because I want to share about my upbringing that was very similar to yours in St. Louis. It was very community, and I recently started investing in my old community because I realized that that was the community that shaped the entrepreneur I am today. And the reason it shaped the entrepreneur I am today, one of the many things that shaped the entrepreneur I am today, was being able to see so many people that look like me. And there's tons of research that speak to this about children learn best from people that look like them because they can, to your point of to your first pillar, identity. I don't think it's so much about a racial construct, but they see themselves in that person, right? They identify as what that other person looks like. And so in my community, I never left my community for anything, right? Although it was very much segregated, like you said, we didn't have single family homes, we had row homes, but they were row homes with marble steps that we had to get up in the morning on Saturday mornings and scrub every day. Scrub every morning. They would glitter, they would gleam every when you finish cleaning them, right? That was a part of our ritual that you had to get up and do that on. That was Saturday, no ifs, ands, or buts. You were cleaning the steps, right? And there was a black owned cleaners. There was shoe cobbler. There was a arcade store. There was a candy store. I mean, you name it, everything was right there, right? And that's all I saw, right? It wasn't until I started branching out beyond my community that I saw other ethnicities owning things, but it was the norm for me, and I was super blessed. My grandparents owned their homes, right? That was my norm, right? No formal education, no college or anything, right? It was They were setting the stage or planting the seed for the next generation. And what I believe happened is they planted the seed, and we felt that some of the things that they did were too harsh, and so we made it easier, right? We made it easier every generation, and we forgot how hard they worked to be able to allow us to be able to have that freedom. Additionally, I just had this conversation with someone the other day. I know when drugs came into my community, right?
Mm.
That is the point. That was the point of no return for my community that I'm working to rebuild now, because I feel like the only way you can rebuild a community is if you're invested in the community. You have to have the ownership in the community, which is
Right.
why that's so important to me. But back to your question, um I I think that not I think I want to stop saying I think, because I really know this. I've been doing this 25 years. So I know that drugs played a huge role in how parents are parenting now, even if they weren't directly affected by drugs. It's the mentality of that separated community, right? The safety went away when people were being harmed because they have an addiction, and all of the things that drugs will do to a community. Additionally, I think that, and this will be, we're going to come back to this on another show, but this is a huge problem. This here this allows you not to be able this has no filter. I remember I don't believe, and we'll also save one of these episodes for, I don't believe in corporal punishment. So I don't care what neighbor no neighbor better not hit any children, but anyway, not even parents, right? But that's a whole nother, we're gonna save that for, that'll be a whole podcast in of itself. But I am doing a lot of research now because this has been a topic, um and I got to witness an organization that I'm about to delve deep into because I agree with their work. they're trying to ban cell phones for school and children under a certain age. And I remember being a little girl, and I was my daddy's favorite of six. And I remember coming home asking him what was gigolo, right? I had to go to him to find out what that meant, right? There was no quick, but he knew that that meant I was hanging out with the wrong group of girls, right? That, like, just even asking, right? It was a cheer. I didn't think anything was wrong with it, right? But he shifted the way that I moved after that, right? He was more present. He came to the school more often. That was an indication for him that something was going on, that he needed to intervene as a parent. This phone doesn't allow us to intervene at all as parents because everything is there. Everything is right there. And that's a whole nother, we'll save that for another time. But I think that most of the the lack of parenting is through the technology that children have access to.
Speaking of that, that's an excellent segue, and it shows you that you and I are really aligned in where we're thinking, because I wanted to shift into this discussion. You gave me the perfect segue. And I was thinking, how are we going to segue from where we were coming from? And where I'm going with this is this. I think we're not being sponsored by anybody, but I'll tell you, one of the best streaming platforms out there, which is a free streaming platform, so anybody can get it, is Tubi, Tubi. And you can get a free account. It has commercials, but it has a lot of the old shows I grew up with, that we all grew up with, if you're from Generation X. And they're great shows. They're great family shows. They have important lessons. And it's different watching these shows now as an adult, as a 56-year-old man, compared to when I was watching them as an 8-9-year-old kid. And looking at the adults as kids, looking at the adults in the show as a child would, now look at the show and I'm an adult looking down at the children. So it's a whole different dynamic, right? And how, to your point, getting rid of the cell phone, if you get rid of that, because the shows nowadays are not designed to be wholesome. See, then the FCC cared about what they put out there. They were very restrictive about what cursing couldn't be done. Lucy, her and her husband slept in different beds on the show to make sure you don't even think that. And all that was very important to them. And to me, that was a value to that. It allowed kids to be kids and not be grown so fast. But I wanted to share with you this something, because I find this to be interesting, because when you really live in a state of gratitude, you don't take anything personal, as we talk about with Don Miguel Ruiz. But to go even further with that, you look at everything as data. Like anything that happens, that's data. That's interesting. What am I growing from that? What do I learn from that? Is how you look at it, as opposed to why did this happen to me? So anyway, now with that being said, I never watched Archie Bunker as a kid, because I was told Archie was racist. It was a racist show. Nobody wanted to watch racist shows. And I watch it now, and Archie wasn't racist. Archie was a bigot, absolutely. And he was definitely prejudiced in his beliefs, and he definitely believed in living the privileged life that white supremacy gave him, the construct gave him. But what was interesting about the show, in the first show, he had a whole separate show. He had two shows, actually, which was new to me. I didn't know that. He had All in the Family, and most of the dynamics were centered around a black family and the dynamics between him and the Jeffersons. That's where the Jeffersons came from. And so, but for Archie to be a racist, he let Lionel stay at his house one day. What racist does that? He kissed Sammy Davis Jr. on the cheek. What racist does that? He actually shopped and did business with the Jefferson's cleaners. What racist does that? So even through his own bigotry, it allowed him to focus on being fully human within that context. And that fully human humanity is what helped him to make it a great show. And I love how the writers were able to walk that fine line of talking about issues that will be polarizing right now and triggering right now in this world. It couldn't even have a show like that. They were able to masterfully walk that fine line of writing about things that were controversial, but at the same time adding humor to it and still allowing it to be, at the end of the day, a great show. And then, of course, we know Archie was basically a caricature of someone who was a bigot, but they still had his humanity. He still had his humanity as he was building. Now you're back now. So
I'm glad you kept it going. Thank you.
yeah, I'm gonna keep it going. So anyway, I'm going with this is that how I talked about the writers back then were able to masterfully write a show about issues you couldn't even do today because they're too triggering and people will be get offended so easily. But they're able to talk about race and talk about Archie called Hebrews Hebes. He talked about black people. He talked about everybody. But at the end of the day, he always did human things. Like I said, he shot with the Jeffersons, and that was the first season of Archie, right? All in the Family. So he had another show that started right after that called Archie Bunker's Place, and then this dynamic, Archie is now dealing with a Jewish family, the Jewish business owner. He buys a bar, and where I'm going with this is that I love how they wrote this Jewish business guy's character because he's just so wise, and he's about in his 50s, but he has this way of just dropping jewels and wisdom to make his point. So one day, um, he was buying out Archie's business partner, and his attorney, who's a Jewish guy, was telling him, "You don't want to become a partner with Archie Bunker. You know who he is. That's not a partnership you want." The guy's like, "Listen, it is. This is a great opportunity I can build with this." He don't know Archie yet, but he has an optimism. He has a hope, that mindset of I can do what I want to do, and I see opportunity here. And so the guy said, "Listen." So I guess he couldn't talk him out of it. He said, "So I guess you one of those Jews who just like pain." He said, "No, I'm more one of those Jews who don't see pain." And that was just so powerful the way he said that. And it was like, wow, that little nugget. And throughout the show, and I'm watching it, he's just dropping these Jews about where he just says these little profound statements that just really is really a good counter to George. I mean, I'm sorry, to Archie, where George was meeting Archie with his energy of bigotry and racism. Like, I'm gonna be a black bigot, right? And coming at him, I hate white people, you hate black people. That's our common interest, right? Our wives that help love each other. But in the new show, the Jewish guy, his way to check Archie intellectually is just so great. It's so interesting to watch that dynamic play itself out. And I'm just grateful for, again, good TV that I don't have to watch these shows nowadays, which are reality shows to show Real Housewives or whatever city that is with all that drama. So right there, they're teaching the kids, to your point now. I'm going to wrap up my point by saying this, going back to that, is how I believe the construct is intentionally using those devices to program our children so that they continue to grow up and be constantly in anxiety, needing drugs, needing fast food, lacking in a perpetual state of lack, which forces them to always be shopping and stay in a consumer mindset.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a conversation. I'm going to cut this part of the clip and send it over to Nigel that I had this conversation with the other day. This is the best form of psychology through music, media. I mean, it is perpetuating, feeding into the construct so that we can continue to operate within a certain system. And so I think part of parenting, and I wanted to make this point earlier, that I think is one of the things that we don't factor in is I don't know how many parents wanted to be parents, right? So being thrown into a position that you didn't want, like you slept with this dude or this woman because she was beautiful, he was handsome, and we were having a good day, a good time that night, right?
Right.
I'm not sure if that's the plan, right? That was the plan. And based on the relationships that a lot of my parents have and the interactions that they have with baby daddy or baby mama, I don't think that that was that they were that was a thought out, oh, let's bring a human being into this world, right? And so we have to factor that in when we proposing solutions about how to be better parents. Is if I never signed up for this and I got to show up for it every day for the next 18 years, that's going to change the way that I show up for this person, right? When people think about, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children, or even not even get married. Some people, that's not their way. Maybe it's just, I want to have children. That's a different energy than I'm being thrown into this situation, stuck with this other adult that I don't even really like. I like to just to sleep with her, right? But I don't even like her as a person. I think that that's something to think about, even when we're thinking about how can we better support parents, is that sometimes we're supporting individuals that have no interest, and even unbeknownst to them, because it's just they know that it's a responsibility that they have to take on, so they tolerate it, but they're not enjoying it. And so I think that when we propose solutions for them, there's two different ways to look at it. Like, is this the parent that we're talking about? I have to tolerate this kid for the next 18 years, and the other parent, or is this the parent that they planned this, right? So when I was reading books when I was pregnant, and most of those books are written for the parent that wanted that kid.
Mm.
Like, those
Wow.
books are not written for the one that's figuring out, how do I my salary didn't even cover me. So I surely wasn't even thinking about a kid. Now I got to think about how to feed it and me, and so that's a whole nother lens to look through when we think about how can we help these families.
You know, and you taught me back to, I wrote a Substack article about this, being raised as a black boy and what that looks like. And what, to the point about parenting not being ready. And see, here's the culture that the construct creates, a cyclical pattern that just gets worse and worse every generation because it gets younger and younger. Is that I remember this, that when I got to be 9 or 10, I would see my uncles and they would ask me, "Yeah, boy, you got any girlfriends?" At 9 or 10, right? I'm still figuring out who I am and having fun. He asked me about a girlfriend. So, and they say it in the context of, if you don't have one, that's a problem, right? And then if you only have one, that's a problem. So you should have more. And they would celebrate if I said I got 3 or 4, and I would lie. Yeah, I got 4. Yeah, they give me a high five and celebrate. And so what they're doing is teaching me at an early age right there that that's the definition of man. The more girls I have, the more of a man I am. And so now when I get older and I start dating now, really, and I got permission to go out on dates and tap into my natural, uh, you know, hormones at that age where you are, excitedly sexually, you're figuring things out. You got saw movies, I saw at that time, by the time saw some form of porn. Back then it was magazines, but now they definitely get access to porn easily, to your point, on the phone. And so my point is, here I am now. So now I'm dating and I start engaging with these women based on what I was told, based on what I think a man is, but without understanding how to be a man with these women. And then I have a baby now because I'm acting in this lustful act because I saw it on TV and I saw it on porn, and my uncle told me that's what being a man is. And then I got a child. So my intention wasn't to create this child out of love. It was an accident. It's something I did not want. And so I'm bringing that energy into the world, and through that child has to come into the world with that energy with me as a parent. So I just want to share. I thought about that, and I wrote a Substack article about that, because so now you have to deal with them as a business, where now the father has to grow up quickly, right? And so when fathers age now, to your point, you say your father, you were your father's favorite. I'm sure you're the youngest as well, and I know you're the youngest. So by that time, your father had figured it out, right?
Right.
He's figured out how to be a parent. So now he wants you. There's a
Right.
different energy, right? So now there's love with your creation. So now I gain wisdom. I can raise my child better.
Absolutely. And so it's 6 of us, and I'm the next to the youngest, right? And just to make a point, and of course, I love this moment of just knowing that I was my daddy's apple of my daddy's eye. Is that, oh man, my mom's coming in on this part. But anyway, so my dad, they had 4 children, right? He had her have her tubes untied to have me, right? So imagine all of that intention in it, right? But even before that, right, he
Right,
was
right,
drafted against his own will to Vietnam. uh Having to, I mean, their situation was a little different than the parents that I'm talking about, because they were married, right? So the intent was, we are going to have children, right? But when you think of all of the unwed parents that I serve, that was not the intent at all, right? And then on top of it, some of them get twins, right? Like I got like 5 sets of twins, and you know, I'm always having twins here, right? So not only is it just one mouth now, like they come with two mouths now, and then it's like, okay, well, we're stuck together now, and then you start building on that. And even when you think about people bonding over trauma, like in communities like this, they my mama just wrote me a note. It wasn't it I wasn't intentional. It was control. He was controlling. So okay. So for the record, I wasn't an intentional baby. I was a control baby. Okay. So yeah, so you know, it's just a domino effect. And so right now a lot of my work is spent in figuring out what this narrative is, right? The books don't speak to it, the book may speak to parenting, but does the book speak to the person that didn't want the children? Which is, you know, a lot of people, that's something heavy to even carry, to say I didn't want, especially when abortion was an option, right? You know, like nobody wants to outwardly say I didn't want this. You know, like I didn't sign up for this. And I don't even think most of them realize what all it entails until until they're thrown in it, which is why we are always figuring out how to engage parents to help to better support them.
well, I think most people realize, like, we like to believe that you were the plan baby, which you were the plan baby at the very least, right? Most people are accidental babies, you know. So based on how the mother and the father had to deal with it and how they were raised, now it's going to have an impact on how they parent their children, and that's how important it is for the intentionality to be there in the community and the parenting and the rites of passage, which is why I really respect the Jewish community so much, because they have that structure in them, right? They have that rites of passage you have to go through to say, here's what adult looks like. And we had that back in the day as well. It wasn't as defined as that, but in certain communities within particularly the South, where all we had was community, we had to thrive off community. The rites of passage was, as you said, Big Mama. And everybody understood who and respected Big Mama. Big Mama, there was a Big Mama in everybody's family. Tyler Perry got billionaire off being Big Mama, because that's how important the Big Mama is in the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that was our rites of passage. But what happened is they got weeded out because it wasn't intentionality around it. We just did it. See, the Jews brought intentionality to their culture and said, this is how the framework. So when you go off of it, they can always say, no, you got away from this. This is what you're supposed to do. They could the whole community could get you back on track again, getting that true north back. We didn't have that. We just did it because that's how we live. And there's pros and cons to that. The con to it is it can get selected out. And that's what we see in today's world, I believe.
Right, right. I totally agree. I wonder, um when I think of just the families that I serve, most of them don't have a big mama. Like I think that might be some research for me too. Like, you know, like it is, um a, big mama is at the club with most of them. So,
Right. Big
you know,
Mama's 28 now instead of
right. So yeah,
48.
and I'm working diligently to be that big mama. I don't want to be big though, and I don't want the fat underneath of my arms like I used to play with on my big mama. But I want to be that for my family. Like I know how important that matriarch is. The thing that I would caution is, nobody ever thought about big how Big Mama cared for herself, right? Big Mama cared about everybody else and never took care of herself. And so that's where I am now, is finding that balance of being a matriarch and still taking care of yourself. So I think Black women have for eons taken on the burden of so much that they lose themselves. So I think that having that balance and self-care and self-awareness, to your point, and those governing principles that allow you to have boundaries around what you will and will not do. Like, I'm not the big mama that's going to let you use my credit and I lose my house because or you go to jail
Right.
and I put up my house. I ain't that big mama, but I do want to make enough solid investments so that I could put up one of my houses for you. But it ain't gonna be my where I lay my head.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that if we could, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole about Big Mama, but I think that this is the importance of even teaching parenting. Oh, I want to also plug how many times you said learning how. I love when people say, I'm learning how to do this or learning how to do that, but I'm learning how to help um, um, pass that torch, to be able to educate myself in a way that when I'm not just being big mama where I don't understand how to complete a college application, or and again, big mamas all did the best that they could. And so in my I'm sure I want the children after me to continue to grow and improve. And so that's where I am in parenting, in leading and learning how to govern myself so that I can make sure I'm a better steward for others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now I just want to add this to the my last little piece on the Big Mama. Big Mama wasn't always big. Now she was often big, but Big Mama wasn't about just being a big woman. It was also about her authority over the family unit, like
Right,
her ability to command stuff. When she walked in the room, she brought a different energy.
right,
Right? People looked to her for wisdom and guidance, and she
right,
could be frail. She could be little. Right? So they turned her into a caricature. May always made her big in the movies and all that. But I had a grandmother that was small and tiny, but still had Big Mama essence.
right.
Right? And so I wanted to say that too. But to your point now, and that's what each generation is supposed to get better. And that's why I think, again, I'm not a parent, but I understand sacred geometry, I understand quantum physics, I understand spirituality in the context that I believe that parents' goal should be not to make your child's life easier, but to give them more resources. Because if you make it easier, then they're gonna grow up and not be ready to deal with the world as it is. Because the world doesn't get easier; the world is getting worse. So if you give them a environment where everything's easy, and they step out into the real world and realize they're gonna be a shock, they're not be prepared for that. I mean, the world will sit here and take I remember one of the scariest things I saw as a kid. They used to show us movies in the school, and that whole auditorium we would watch it as a whole class, or everybody in that whole class together, and they would show you uh, kidnappers in white vans offering kids candy and snatching you off the street. That's what you have to be careful of. So you never talk to a stranger, right? They putting that in your head at that age. So that's the real world, right? You can get snatched off the street. And a certain neighborhood, a straight bullet can just come and knock you out and take you out, take your friend out, right? So that's the reality of balancing the act. That's why I love when you talk about your other podcasts that you do and your whole book that you're writing and what you're advocating for. Parenting doesn't come with a book because of that dynamic changing generationally, social media, the phones, technology, uh, fathers taken out of the community every generation, less and less men in the community, and that has an impact.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm going to end with this because I know I am. I can't stress enough how much a daddy's girl I am, or was. Um, my my father. I People reference my father now because he was such a um a. My mom can't stay still in her chair. She must be missing him right now when I talk about him. Um, um, uh, so he was such a staple in the community for everybody that did lose their father to drugs or anything, that people now to this day reference him as Mr. Tony is why I'm the man I am today, right? So just I mean, just like we can sit with how much of an influence that somebody that's making the right decisions refuse to deviate no matter how much his family was in need. He would not deviate from legal ways of making money, right? When everything was laid in front of him to be able to do something different, he always chose the straight and narrow, and that was respected. And so, um, I end with this point because I realize that although things may not look like they're working when you are choosing the higher road, the influence and impact that it's leaving on something or somebody is so much bigger than who we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. As we get ready to wrap up our show, we move into our last section of our show, which I'm gonna put you on the spot for we hadn't discussed, but I think it's a good thing we can go ahead and do to end our show. And going forward, our shows are going to be every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, learning how to be more fully human. So as we end our show, I want each of us to think of one person that we feel has been either in the past or currently living what we identify here as fully human based on those 6 pillars. And so I'm gonna go first. This is the first time that I've thrown this on you to kind of show you the context, and you can say whoever you want, and you can say why. It's totally up to you. So the person I'm gonna choose today is the person who I watched last night. I felt inspired by, and that's Bob Marley. And Bob Marley, I feel, is fully human and exhibit these behaviors because the fact is, again, he saw himself, and he said several times. One of the guys in the movie said, "You're a superstar." He said, "No, man, I'm not a superstar. I'm just a regular person, man. I'm a Rasta. You know what I'm saying? I'm for the community." Like he saw his identity as being someone who had a message, and his job was to get that message out, and he did it to the best of his ability. His growth mindset, he constantly learned and understood that humans were what made us great, and that we need to be connected and have community. And his songs reflected that. There was never any evil intention to any of his songs. His songs were about love. He talked about revolution and what would happen, but he also talked about love. His purpose in serving was always about how he can use his music to impact and again increase people's energy, and that was great. His grateful spirit for his ability to have his gift, and he knew he had a gift, and that's why he stayed focused on his gift as much as he constantly could. He had governing principles based in the Rastafarian religion and structure and culture. His moral givings helped him become the man he was because he went to Africa and he fired his manager because he wanted to go to Africa. And they told him that Africa wasn't going to be profitable and just tour the United States and tour Great Britain. And he chose to go to Africa. He told his manager, "I don't even want to charge him. Africa could be free. Just make sure my band get paid." So he had those governing principles given back and self-awareness of understanding who he was as a legend and keeping a lifestyle that people could look at him and offer and honor his legacy. So Bob Marley is my person I want to lift up.
Thank you for that. I agree that Bob Marley. I always say love is the culture here and learning how, and that is what Bob Marley definitely exuded to me. Um, keeping along the lines of Rastafarians. I have a meeting scheduled with someone you and I both know, Rash Trey. I would say that Rash Trey is a great example of somebody that and I have in our notes that I want to make this when we do these things physically. I want to make acrylic flower. I have that. I'm gonna look that up once we disconnect as the actual award to give. But so you're gonna have to find an image of a flower. I know you're great with that. So we're gonna need an image. So when we have this moment, because we can end this way every time of giving somebody flowers. And next time I'll be prepared. But
I know you will.
yeah, but we were right in alignment because when you said Rasta, it was like perfect. Like, oh, I just got finished bragging about Rosh Trey to somebody else last night. So Rosh Trey would be my person that I would say, I mean, to continue to show up and be so talented in so many ways, and always looking at ways that he could use his talent for others, right? Like, I know you know this, but just for the our audience, Raj Trade for the past umpteen years, 10 years, 15 years plus, he has been taking young boys, teaching them videography, and taking them to Ghana and teaching the young boys in Ghana the same thing, and then bringing them together so that they could see themselves. Like, that work alone to me, like, and this dude is so talented that he could take his skill set and be off as a multi-billionaire somewhere. He speaks, I don't know how many different languages. He could just market just his things that he know how to do, and make crazy money, but he still chooses to show up in mission aligned spaces where he could support them. And so I'm glad we're having this discussion, because we meet for dinner on Friday, and I'm going to be really intentional to make sure that I support his work in a way that not only acknowledges him in this space, but gives him his flowers by being intentional about supporting the work that he does so that it can touch more people.
Love it. And you're not in alignment on that. And I definitely want to do and deal with you on that. So as we get ready to wrap up today's show, I want to thank everybody who's listened to us today on our first show. That's why I think we did a great show. I got a great energy from it. I think we got a great structure we can flow with going forward. We can build on, and it's only going to get better. And so until next Tuesday at 12 p.m., let's all continue to learn how to be more fully human.
It's the Baltimore. I got to throw in the Baltimore.
Be blessed.
Thank you.